State Representative Lin Bennett has been reelected for 2 more years to serve the constituents of South Carolina in House District 114, which covers parts of West Ashley and Summerville. I talk one-on-one with State Representative for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. State Representative Lin Bennett, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's so great to be here and see you, Quintin. I don't think I've seen you for a year, at least in person.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, the last time I saw you was at the corner of North Market and obviously East Bay Streets downtown the market where I work.
Waved at me. Yeah, I remember that. That was a long time ago.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I know, obviously, I have to say this first, congratulations to you on your reelection.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm excited to get another chance to serve the constituents of District 114 and get back to working on some things that just fell apart because of COVID last year.
What are those things that have fell apart that you want to get passed in the next General Assembly?
Education reform. It is. I thought the education reform bill wasn't perfect, but it was a great start. And we just actually could never get. We passed in the House and went to the Senate, and they had a filibuster and they debated it. And about the time they decided to wrap that up was when we were all adjourned for COVID.
Wow. And you say you start. What do you need to finish right now with that?
Well, there were things in that bill besides increase in teachers' pay, and I really think we can do that. We need to do that because we need to attract more teachers. We have a teacher shortage. We need good teachers, and I believe a pay increase will help us to achieve that goal. It also contained something that I thought was very important, and that was a career path as opposed to a path to college, because we know half our kids don't go to college. And this would have offered them the opportunity to take another route, to be trained in a trades or a certification program that would have allowed them to gain skills for a good job. We've got shortages on these trades jobs, and the CDL truck drivers is one we have a crisis with in our state. And those are good paying jobs. So we can get those kids started on being trained and educated in those kind of jobs, and they can be very productive as soon as they walk out of high school and have a future. Now they really don't. They get out of high school, and if they don't go to college, it's difficult for them because they're not trying to do anything else. I mean, they can choose to go to a trade school or a journeyman's course, but that costs them money as well. They have to pay for that. So we can offer them early training on these things and hopefully define a path that interests them as opposed to this college curriculum that we push so hard in our school system.
And State Representative, let me ask you this. How much would this, let's say for lack of a better word, the path to trade versus the path to college, how much would that cost the average taxpayer in South Carolina?
Well, they would probably not, it wouldn't cost them anything. In fact, they would probably save some money because I think these kids would take some of these trades things. We pay for college here with our lottery program. And that program does include not just 2- and 4-year colleges, but it includes certification programs as well. And the quicker that we can make you a productive working citizen, that just benefits us. It's a return on our investment, and we need to start looking at it as our children are our biggest investment in this state, and their ability to have a productive life and a future is just a great investment that we will get big returns on in the future.
And what returns have you gotten on the previous investment?
Well, I don't think we made a previous investment, Quintin. We're 50th in the nation. We continue to be 50th in the nation. And every time we bring that up, the system, which loves itself and the system that it's in, fights for changes. So the reason that this was so important is because it finally addressed some things that were needed in our state. And we're getting no return on investment with what we've got now. We are losing kids. Our kids don't know how to read. That was another thing that was in the bill, was reading. I mean, the first thing that you have to do to accomplish any of this is to make sure our children can read at a basic third grade level. And if they don't, and we keep promoting them through school, the further along they get, the less interested they get because they cannot keep up. By the time they get to high school, they don't even care anymore because they know they're not going to make it. They just know in their hearts they can't keep up. They can't follow the instruction. They can't, and they just ride through, and we let them out. And then you've got a few industrious people that want to try to go to community college. Well, then they've got to take a ton of remedial courses before they can even start one accredited college course, and that's pathetic. That's another thing we did in the bill. Your remediation's now going to have to come in high school before you get out. We're not going to wait till you get out and remediate you. We're going to try to do it while you're still in high school.
Now, Representative, let me go district by district, and you probably may not know the answer, or you may know, but how many kids have District 114 lost in the past 2-3 years?
I'm sorry, District what?
114.
How many students have we lost?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know. You mean well, I can, countywide it was, I don't know what it was by district, but you mean because of the COVID thing?
That too. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, we just lost track of them because we couldn't keep track of them because they were home. And but we did find most of them. I think we're still missing, and this is statewide, about 600. But most of what we found is a lot of these children just moved. Either, their parents moved them somewhere else, or they moved in with family because they couldn't make it on their own during COVID. So they're still looking for they just would like to know where these other 600 some kids went to. They may too be living somewhere else or with other family members. But that was primarily the problem, was that the economy was so bad, parents were not working, so they either needed to go live with other family members or they moved somewhere where they could actually get a job.
Yes, ma'am. And you talk about jobs. How many jobs have been lost since COVID in your district?
They don't put that number out. They only put it out statewide. They put it out statewide. I know several small businesses that have lost their business due to this. I know several that are struggling, but I think they're going to make it. I mean, I've noticed an improvement in some of these small businesses around here. So, it's going to be tough. I hope we don't shut down again because I don't know if they make it through a second shutdown.
Hey, let me get back earlier. Well, let me go to this. You talked earlier about that lottery system that obviously pays for a lot of the education around here in South Carolina. How has that been affected by COVID?
That is still available. Kids can still get that. That's the funny thing about lottery tickets. It doesn't matter what kind of a question you might be in, you can always afford a lottery ticket somehow. It's part of the American dream in hopes that that you will hit that lottery. So the lottery money is still there. Where we're missing money, where we've lost a lot of money, is our workers' comp insurance fund has gone from like $2.1 billion to like $860 million. And it's starting to build up because jobs are starting to come back. But it was a concern for a while that, that fund may be depleted, and how would we address that?
And if, let's say hypothetically, it was depleted, how would you replace that fund?
Well, that would be interesting because revenues are down across the state as a result of people not working and businesses not being able to do business. So we would have had to look at, tightening things up. The last thing that I want to do is cut and have somebody in a state job lose a job, because we need those jobs. But state employees did not have that problem. We kept them as much as we could. But those people we promise unemployment benefits if you lose a job, and we would have just had to look for a place to get the money from, and it would have just been painful. No matter how you looked at it, it would have hurt somebody.
And you talked earlier about the trade shortages. Where exactly is that, Representative Bennett, in South Carolina?
Oh my goodness! Have you tried to get a plumber lately?
Not yet.
Let's just start with them. There are very few people are always trying to get tradespeople's plumbers, electricians, carpenters. There are very few because that has not been promoted as a glorious job. It's a well-paying job. And they charge us an awful lot right now because there's only so many of them. I needed a plumber twice. One time I was able to get one within a day because it was emergency, but then the other wasn't, and it took a little bit longer. And then, of course, if they hit, and this happened, if they hit an emergency, they call you and try to reschedule because they've got to, I mean, you don't want your house flooding. So they try to get to those as quickly as they can. Carpenters, my gosh, I wanted a carpenter for months to help me do some work on my front porch. And I'm having the darndest time trying to find one who's available, you know, without having to wait 6 months or something like that. Or who's just told me, I'm so overbooked, I'm not taking any more work. So it's electricians. There's another one. I wanted to hook up a fan on my pergola, and he just told me that he wasn't interested in that kind of work because he's got plenty of work in the building industries to keep him busy, so he wasn't doing residential work.
How is the building industry here in South Carolina?
Well, it seems to be exploding. New housing costs, real estate is exploding because so many people are moving here into this community from, I guess, places where they didn't like the lockdown. I've heard a lot of that has happened. Quality of life, we have a great quality of life here. We used to. I don't know how it's going to be in the future as we get more and more crowded, but yeah, people are buying houses. So if you're in the real estate industry, all of my friends that are in the real estate industry are telling me that they're busy. They are busy. There's a lot of work out there for them to get.
And how many new homes have been added to, say, District 114?
I don't know that we've added any new homes. We have some coming. We have a community called Savannah. Oh God, what is that name again? Just right up the road from me, and that's going to be like 6,000 homes. They haven't started yet. Wow! But it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge, and it's going to make Ashley River Road a little more interesting than it is now.
Well, let's talk about it. Infrastructure. What is your plan for that?
Well, if infrastructure gets complicated because part of the infrastructure is county owned, part of it city owned, and part of it's state owned. And if you've ever worked with those three entities, does not ever want to cross the other. What I'd love to see is the Glen McConnell Parkway extended up to Ridgeville, which has always been in the works, but no money has ever been set aside for that. And Charleston County would be responsible for doing that. It's their property, it's their plan, but they have they put no money into it yet. And the last I asked, which was 6 months ago, they have no plans to put. And I think that's a very important infrastructure piece for us down here. That would relieve all of the traffic that's on Ashley River Road and Bees Ferry, where they have to cross over to get to Glen McConnell or vice versa. That would be an excellent source. And you know, with the new housing developments going in up that way, it would help relieve some of the traffic. But the last I heard, there's not even any plans to fund that. It's a plan, but you can't do anything till it's got money and it's funded.
Okay, they don't have a plan. They don't have any money. Who do they hope to get fund this particular project?
Well, they would have to fund it. You know, I'd be glad for the state to take it over. Now I say that, but the state may not be glad for me to do that. This is where we get into problems with local control. I mean, you can ride around District 114 and you can be in a neighborhood, literally a residential area. You can be on a road that belongs to the state. And then you can turn a corner and you can be on a road that belongs to the city. And then you can turn another corner and that road belongs to the county. So when you get a complaint about a road problem or a pothole or a ditch problem, it's really sometimes hard to find who owns that road and who's responsible for it. Now, when I find out that it's a state road, I can certainly put a lot of pressure on the state to get it fixed. The county, you know, they've got their own process, and so me complaining doesn't always help, but it does help when the residents complain because they understand they get elected by the residents.
And what are your residents complaining about right now when it comes to those state roads?
My residents are not complaining. Their biggest complaint was Ashley River Road, mostly up past Middleton Place, where it was full of, you've been up there, it's full of potholes, it's ruggedy, it's just nasty to drive on. And I've been bugging to get that road paved, resurfaced for years. Well, they're finally doing that. Of course, it's causing traffic issues, and we always knew that it would, because we have to shut down one lane in order to pave one lane. But it's getting done. They seem to be moving fast, and it'll be a much nicer drive between Charleston and Summerville if you're going down Highway 61.
And you talk about, obviously, a lot of people moving to your district. How can you ensure growth with smart growth?
How can I assure that?
Yes, ma'am.
I can only fight for it and ask for it, but it's not a state project. My neighbors and I are all paying attention to it. We're watching all the Zoom meetings. We're trying to keep in touch. And as a resident of this area, I let my thoughts be known. But that's just not a state program.
Yes, ma'am. And let me ask you this.
Maybe I can run for county council. Maybe that's a better idea.
Oh, you?
My neighbors and my constituents understand where the line is and where we have to go and where we stick together on those things. We have a new county council person. My hope is that she will be paying attention to what's going on around here, and things will get started. What is exactly the quality of life in your district right now? Well, we're doing good. We're getting crowded though, and that just makes traffic just a nightmare. If you work, you have no choice. You are stuck in early morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour. When schools are in session and buses are on the road, that adds to that. So the quality of transporting yourself from point A to point B is probably not the best until we get more road structure, until we get a better. We need to control growth. There's another thing. The reason we have all this traffic is because so many people are moving here. There's, the new housing projects in the last 10 years down at Grand Oaks, and, it just boomed. And so we're all here trying to go one way, and there's just not a lot of roads to do that anymore.
Well, how many roads do you actually want for your district?
Well, like I said, I would like to finish Glenn McConnell, at least to take some pressure off of that. I would like to. 526 is going to be widened, but that's going to be painful also for a while. That will allow more traffic on the road. We are building now so close to, if you're riding down Ashley River Road towards St. Andrews, you will notice that now they're putting these buildings up right to the road. So I don't know how we're going to ever widen that road, since it now has an apartment building and a storage unit that are right up to the sidewalk. So there's no room left to even try to ever widen that road up there. We may be able to widen it down this way. There has been discussion about widening Glenn McConnell down at this end. And I think there's a plan to do that. It's just going to take a while to go through all the studies that they have to do. But, we could use a road that literally gets you from Grand Oaks over to Highway 17, Savannah Highway, other than the fact that you have to come down to Glen McConnell, or you have to go up Bees Ferry Road to there and cut through around Main. It just gets crowded there. So, and there's another thing that's not in my district, but they are going to do some work on Main Road, and I think that's going to relieve some stuff going on over here.
And you talk about those studies. What exactly is an ideal study right now to relieve this issue?
Well, you ought to look into this, Quintin, and display the studies that they have to do, the environmental impact studies. There are tons of them for different reasons, and then they have to be reviewed. And there's transparency. Everybody gets a chance to look at them and put their input in. And Sometimes lawsuits are filed, and you have to go through that lawsuit process before you can do anything, and that can make things move a lot slower. 526, they're going to extend that. We finally got that done. That was one of the things that I went to Columbia to get done, and we worked locally with our county councilmen and our state representatives, and we finally got 526 extension completed. So they're going to do that, but right now it's going to take 10 years because right now they're in that review process and that study process, and they've got to go through all of that before they can put the first shovel in the ground.
What more do they need to review?
Well, anybody is allowed to contest anything that the Corps of Engineers does a lot of review. Anybody's allowed to contest that, and then it has to go to court, and it's got to be debated and discussed, and it goes before public forums, and people can at the forums they can agree that they don't like what the result is. So it's just that whole process of doing the actual studies easy. Getting the study past the point of approval is usually the hard part.
The hard part. And I might be asking a redundant question, Representative Bennett, but with the COVID situation affecting the local economy so badly, do you know how it has affected tax revenues in your district that needs, obviously, for the fund projects?
Not in my district, but statewide, it's impacted us. And that's why we did a continuing resolution. Because we don't know what the final number for the budget this year is going to be as revenues continued to go down. And that was where we had concern, because one of the things that we didn't want to do is the Senate put a lot of stuff in the budget, but if the budget failed, what would we do? We'd have to cut, and cuts hurt, and we didn't want to cut. So that's why we stayed on this continuing resolution, which means we're just chugging along at the same rate as last year. We didn't consider this 1.8 billion that we were expecting is not going to come in. Obviously, it's already. Somebody said we still had 700,000, but that was early on. We hadn't finished the year yet, so I have no idea where that is right now.
And what was that rate last year?
What was what rate?
When you talk about that, the budget and the continuing resolution, that is.
Well, what we had was, we have an annual budget every year, and by state law, it has to be balanced. When the way that we had some money, excuse me for that, we had some money, about 800,000 left. More we collected last year. We went back and we did some tax things which were not big deals, and funded some things that we didn't think we could fund. And then the Department of Revenue notified us that based on the rate of growth, and this is just how it works, that we would be bringing in an extra $1 billion+. So we use that to do all kinds of things: give teachers pay, put more money in schools, look, just some things that we had wanted to do. Tax increases was a part of that as well. Or tax decreases, not increases. I'm sorry, boy, I'll get slapped for that one. Tax decreases were a part of that as well. But then COVID hit. Right. And that extra money just was not going to be there. And no one, even Department of Revenue said, we just don't know what's going to be. We just don't know where we're going to be yet at the end of the year. Now we've started picking up, but we don't have those numbers yet, because at some point before July, we will have to deal still with last year's budget. We have to finalize it and approve it. And then we've also got to look at next year's budget. So it's going to be a challenging year for us.
And where were those tax decreases?
We had put in some tax decreases. We put in a couple of bills, actually, one to lower the state sales tax and one to lower the income tax, but we just couldn't get to any of them. We just couldn't get it. In fact, I was a co-signer of both of those bills, but we just could not get to them. So we will put them back in again. Of course, we have to see what's happening, but we'll see, And we may have to.
Yeah. And what support do you have right now from the Senate?
I don't speak for the Senate.
Oh, yeah, right.
They don't tell me. I'm sorry. They just don't tell me what they agree with and what they don't agree with. The Senate will be interesting this year because I have 3 new members, as you're aware. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there and whether, the Senate is a deliberative body. They're supposed to go slower than we do, but sometimes they go too slow. So maybe some things will get addressed this year as we move into the new year, because everything has to be refiled. Everything that we did last year is gone. So we have to refile everything. And we also need to know where we are before we do that.
Speaking of filing, obviously we're getting closer to the pre-filing period. What exactly do you want to pre-file for your district for 2021?
Well, I can't pre-file. You got to remember, we're a state. We're not a district. I represent the district. So I can't just pre-file something for my district. It has to be something that's good for the whole state. I am going to refile the bus bill. If you recall, last year we had this bus bill and it didn't get done because of COVID. So I'm going to pre-file that because that affected a lot of children in our area. They weren't necessarily in my district. In fact, the one that I was dealing with the most was not in my district, but it was next to my district, and I was helping with that because she couldn't get a response from anybody else. So it was a bad situation. So I stepped in and said, well, I can't make the county do anything, but I can certainly introduce legislation that might address situations like this. And then I heard from other people. And then, when we had the hearing, Greenville County came up, and I think it was Lexington County that admitted they had these same problems in their districts, and they were in great support of the busing bill. So I'm going to introduce that. I'm going to introduce a bill on human trafficking. We're working on it now. I'm going to introduce that early. And that affects us locally because we have a lot of it here.
Yes,
because
indeed.
we're at town. So we're going to work on getting that in right away. There's an education bill that I want to work on that I hope I can get in early. If I can, I'll just get it in when we get back up there. You just got to do so much research to get these bills done. So those are some of the things I'm looking at filing early.
And what else are you researching when it comes to human trafficking here in South Carolina?
Well, there's nothing to research on that. We've got that bill is done. We've got lots of data. The Litch Foundation on human trafficking is an excellent source for figuring out, and they will break it down, not necessarily by our district, but by states and areas like Charlotte and Charleston and Columbia. So that's the source that we have used. And we've got a human trafficking task force in the Low Country, which I am a part of, and basically their job is to try to find support services for these women that are victims of or children. A lot of children in this, by the way, victims of human trafficking. But in the meantime, the penalties and the things that happen, it's heartbreaking. When they arrest a young 15, 16, 14, sometimes year old young lady on the street for prostitution, she's usually part of a sex trafficking thing. Well, she gets charged with prostitution, and she won't give up, whoever is her her pimp is. And of course, the John just gets a slap on the wrist. Now, this is a guy who's obviously buying sex from what's obviously a young person. So I think Johns should be a contributing factor. And I think, if you can find them heavily, maybe they'll think twice about doing this and getting caught. But right now, it's nothing. They just walk away. So I want them to be part. If you buy illegal marijuana, you would be in trouble. Why isn't buying illegal sex getting you in trouble? That's kind of the comparison that I make. So we're going to work on trying to make the penalties much stronger and to help these young women and young children who are the victims of this. And I have to say that the Low Country Human Trafficking Task Force is a force to be reckoned with because they are working so hard to find services and facilities for these young people. That's the services, the services are easier than finding a place for them to stay for a while. That is much more difficult. And we just need to figure out how we're going to do that and how we're going to keep it from happening in the first place.
Sure. And let's play matchup state to state. When you look at North Carolina versus South Carolina, would you adopt North Carolina's penalties for this particular situation?
No, I think we have our own. We have enough data from human trafficking organizations across the country. The Litch Foundation's in California, and there's a foundation up in DC that I get lots of information from. So what we don't want you to come to South Carolina and do this. So we're going to have our own. North Carolina, I'm not even familiar with what they have, but they ought to make theirs stronger as well. But in South Carolina, if you're a child or a woman here, we want you protected.
So what exactly would be an ideal penalty?
What would exactly be an ideal penalty? Well, for Johns, I think $500 to $1,000 fine would be a good start. And for the people who actually sell these human beings to other human beings, there's going to be jail time. I would like 10 years at the least, but I know I've got to deal with the state house attorneys, and that's probably going to get whittled down. But they ought to be in jail. They ought to be in jail, and they shouldn't be walking. They're very protected. They've got people that can pay their bonds easily. Maybe bonds should be denied, or bonds should be very high. I don't know, but jail time needs to go to people who are selling other human beings. If not for sex, then for labor. Either one is wrong.
Now, when the state house attorneys, if they do this, whittle down those penalties, what would you accept as a state representative?
I don't know yet because I don't have anything on the table. I'd have to see that first.
And I know I went back.
I don't know that I would accept anything, but you forget, I'm just one vote. I might vote against it, but my colleagues might vote for it.
Yes, ma'am. I understand completely. And I know I went back on your website earlier today, and you basically said this as far as your entire career as a state representative. You said this: consistent conservative leadership for West Ashley and Summerville. How consistent will your conservative leadership be for the next 2 years?
It'll be the same. I'll still be fighting for good education for our children. That's the reason I went there, is because we're failing our children, and I'm tired of it. I think I have reached the point where I'm just tired of talking to people. So I might be, you have to work with people. You really do have to reach across the aisle and talk to people. And you have to be willing to give things up to get things. I don't know that I'm going to be so willing, because I'm tired of seeing our children being disserviced by this. I'm going to still fight for lower taxes. We are taxed high for a state like South Carolina, which affects the businesses we get because our taxes are so high. And I will fight for families. Families, units are having a difficult time, and they need our support and our backup. And I will just continue being me, trying to help as many people as I possibly can. My biggest thing last year was helping people with unemployment everywhere.
Right. Yes.
Everywhere. That was, and it's just because the unemployment system was so overloaded with so many people trying to get into the system. But I would be on the phone 8 to 10 hours a day,
right,
just trying to help them get their unemployment services resolved.
And a lot of people thank you for your service on that. Let me ask you this: how much tax revenue has District 114 lost over the past 2 years?
I wouldn't know that. You wouldn't break it down by district, to tell you the truth. It's by state. It's state money spent in our. District 114 is not its own district. We don't raise money in District 114. We don't have like our own town council to spend money. We are part of 3 entities. We are part of the state, the county, and the city. So if any one of those 3 entities is losing money, you can count on the fact that District 114 is losing money, and business as well.
And how many businesses have you lost in your particular district? I know you don't like talking district by district, but how much have you lost since COVID?
I can tell you that right off the top of my head, I know of 4 restaurants that we have lost right here in District 114. They just went out of business. They They couldn't keep going. Some are struggling, but I think they're turning around. You know, they've all talked to me. You know, I don't know. Another business that's struggling that I love is It's All About Paper.
Right.
You know, they are struggling. So now I'm buying paper products like crazy and encouraging others. You know, if you need cards or you need wrapping paper or gift bags, please go there and let's try to keep this business open.
And let me go back to the election. Obviously, that was a tough election for you as far as your reelection bid. Who is Lin Bennett now after all of this?
I'm the same person I was before. I'm the same person I was before. So I'm not sure why I'm not sure what you mean, Quintin, to be honest with you.
What have you learned more about yourself as a politician since this particular campaign?
Oh, I tell you what I've learned. I've learned you can outraise me, but you can't outwork me. Nobody works harder than I did. I knocked on 9,300 doors. I made over 10,000 phone calls. I recruited 14 volunteers, which is a lot for a little district race. District races usually only need $25,000 to run, but that didn't happen this time. So I was able to raise the money that I needed to get out my message to my constituents. I was able to interest enough people to work with me to get out my message. And we spent a lot of time talking to people and walking, and I lost 10 pounds, you know, so it was good exercise for me.
That's great to hear. Well, State Representative Lin Bennett, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good to be here, Quintin. Thank you.
Thank you.